something that, especially from a trainer standpoint, right? You might have just met this dog. This dog has no idea who you are or anything like that. So they're not necessarily looking for you particularly when they go missing. They're looking for mom and dad's scent, right? And so if you just want to make sure that you don't get offended when they do turn around and run from you, but if you can get them back relatively quickly, like a game, right? Oh look, and we know that they like playing fetch, whatever, it's or more of a puppy, turn around and run into any kind of fenced-in backyard, run away from them, or toss some food and get down on the ground, type of thing. Just don't make direct eye contact.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm Leanne Shinton from Automation Dogs. Welcome to my podcast where we talk to dog trainers and all sorts of people to help dog trainers with their business. And I reached out looking for someone who could speak to us who does like pet recovery, lost pet recovery, specifically someone that has dogs that find lost pets, because that is badass. So welcome, Carmen Brothers. I love your name. It's like pet detective name.
Thank you. I get mistaken for the Carmen Brothers frequently. So yes.
And it's Carmen Brothers, right?
Oh, it is. Yep.
I
My
said it
first
right.
name's
Okay.
Carmen. My last name is Brother. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But it can be misconstrued on many occasions.
And I have to ask, what is your favorite scene from Ace Ventura: Pet Detective? One of my favorite movies.
What? I probably haven't seen that in
What?
I don't even know how many. Yes. I haven't watched it probably since it came out, to be honest. So I couldn't even tell you.
Okay, you need to go back to that because that's kind of what I'm thinking of when I talk to you. It's
fair.
pretty unique.
And that's fair. Yes, it's definitely a different line of work, if you will.
Very unique and fascinating, and a lot of mystery. I mean, you're a detective, so
yeah, to an extent, it's you put a lot of pieces of the puzzle together. So.
And I love your website. So if folks want to visit professionalpettrackers.com, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Beautiful website. And I think there is a lot of mystery to what you do. I guess, how did you get into this?
Accidentally. So I was volunteering with a rescue out of DC, City Dogs Rescue, probably about 10, 12 years ago, I guess. And they lost a dog. And so I kind of got into the logistics of it, the flyers and the do this and the don't do that. And in the process of trying to locate this dog, we found somebody who tracked lost pets. And it just kind of spun from there. There's a lot of misconception. And I would say 90%, maybe even 95% of people, when they lose a dog, they kind of do the wrong thing because it's your gut instinct. Oh, there goes my dog running down the road. I'm going to chase him. Obviously I'm going to call for my dog and I'm going to go after him. And essentially you should be doing the exact opposite, especially if they've been missing, I'd say over 2 to 4 hours or so. So, again, I learned all about the lost pet behavior and kind of the science behind it. And the, do this, don't do that. And if this happens, do this kind of thing. And it just spiraled from there. I started volunteering with a nonprofit out of Baltimore that helps recover lost pets. And I was doing all of their intake calls. That people would lose their pets and they'd fill out a form or whatnot. So I would talk to them and kind of get them a flyer and go over what tracking was. And more importantly, almost what tracking is not. And if they were interested, I would set them up with a tracker. And then I actually started working a dog of my own. His name was Jake. He was a black and tan coonhound. And he just started, weekends for, something to do for fun. And then I got an opportunity with National Geographic. And they were like, hey, we're doing this show. We'd love for you to be on it. But, you have to quit that full-time job that adults typically strive to have, with those benefits and 401k and film full-time. So me being the responsible individual I am, I'm like, sure, why would I not? And then I just never went back.
Wow. So that call from National Geographic, how did that happen?
Yeah, we filmed full time every day almost for about a year for 3 1-hour episodes. They would come follow us around, whatnot. A lot of people think that when we come out with a tracking dog, we're obviously going to track right up to Fluffy and then hand them their pet. And that's a very, very large misconception. I would say, actually handing somebody their pet at the end of the track, well, that's would be amazing every time, it happens less than 5% of the time. We unlike the 5-year-old that would be excited to see the dog coming to save them, you know, the dogs, cats, whatever, they're sensing me coming towards them before we even get eyes on them. And they're like, wait a minute, what is that? I don't know that scent, because they're relying on their sense of scent at this point more than anything else. And so they move. So we do a lot of proximity, perimeter work. And I wouldn't say strive to not walk up on the pet, but I would rather them stay where they feel safe in an area they've kind of created for themselves, and then work with them to come to us on their terms, with whether that be trail cameras, feeding stations, and then eventually like humane trapping.
And I've seen on like Facebook when someone is, looking for their dog and it just like takes off on them. They're almost feral at that point. Is that a
Yes,
real thing?
it is. It's called flight mode or survival mode. And once they're kind of out on their own, those animal instincts do kick in. It's not necessarily the, fluffy little dog likes to cuddle with you on the couch and doesn't like touching the grass, all of that. Again, that's kind of all out the window. They no longer really associate, their mom, dad, whatever, with sight and sound. It's all about scent. And because, you think they're, again, everything's on high alert and whatnot, and the adrenaline's kick in, and you think about predators, and when predators are coming after prey, they're, standing, making direct eye contact, moving towards them. And that's, your pet's going to flee quick. So unfortunately, because again, they're not taking the time to realize, oh, wait a minute, I know that person. They're just scared and they're going to run. And so it happens relatively quickly with some dogs. And some dogs, I drove all the way to Missouri one time, and it was a golden retriever. And I got there and I got my dog out of the car. It was an only dog. She did like other dogs. I got my lab out of the car at the time, and here she comes bounding out of the woods, just right up to my dog Magic. I was like, oh, I'm so glad I drove 13 hours. Here she is. It's all very dog or animal dependent.
Fascinating. So it like I would freak out if my pet was lost, like most people would, but it sounds like,
Mhm.
you're getting to the destination, you're beginning some of these things you have to do as an expert tracker. Uh, how long is it until sometimes you find some of these pets?
I mean, unfortunately, it's more of a marathon rather than a sprint, and it 100% is a process. And that's something else that, again, when we speak with people initially, we make sure they understand, because it can take a day, it can take a month. I think one of the longest dogs I had out that I was like actively working on getting home, um, she was out over a year and a half, I think. And, some of these dogs with, with the backgrounds on where they come from, sometimes sometimes the rescues you don't know, right? You don't know, what they've been through prior to coming to where they're at now. Some of them are very trap savvy or environmentally aware. And if they don't like, they might not go into, they're not crate trained. So some of the, larger box traps, it looks like a crate. So they're going to have no interest in going in it at all. Or some of them can be too big for a box trap. So you have to get a little creative, and they've got different traps. One's called a missy trap that uses, kennel panels essentially, and you kind of build it around. And then there's a laser and a battery. It's a whole thing. This in particular dog would not go through any kind of threshold at all, whether that be, the box trap, a missy, the doors, nothing. So we actually had to get a drop net brought up from North Carolina. And for that, you have to, it's the size of like a soccer net. And you have to essentially, you have to clear the water and utilities and whatnot, because you're, putting these metal poles into the ground. And then there's magnets that release the net when when she goes underneath it. And you have to condition the dog for that. And, it can be a lengthy process.
But
And I
the,
think,
the
the hardest part with that is getting, the pet parents to not give up hope, right?
That's the
Because it
word
just
I was
gets,
thinking is hope.
right.
Like you're giving me hope that you're able to find these dogs because I think the first thing that comes to mind is they're for sure hit by a car, they're dead. So
Right.
don't
Yeah.
think that and don't give up hope.
No. No, I mean, your animals are smarter than we give them credit for. And, like I said, I've seen people where, oh, my dog doesn't like walking on the grass, or, oh, my dog won't do this, and then my dog won't do that. And the next thing you know, I'm like in the middle of a cornfield, going through all the wet grass and everything. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Again, at the end of the day, that animal instinct is there. They do know how to take care of themselves when they have to. It's just at home, they don't really have to, right? And so,
Yeah.
we cater to them essentially. Um, but they're capable of quite a bit more than we give them credit for.
Very good point. Very good point. Can you tell me or share? I know you sent me a lot of videos. I really
Hmm.
appreciated watching those. Could you tell us a little bit about a specific case that stands out to you in your career?
Wow, let's see. Okay. Well, kind of recently ish. So actually, the dog was out 4.5 years. Um, I tracked a Chihuahua named Sugar back in June of 2021 in the Richmond, Virginia area. And, again, you get to an area and then you put up feeding stations and cameras and all these things, right? And you people kind of underestimate the how important the signage is. Like you have to get flyers up. And the bigger the better, the simpler the better. Because at the end of the day, whether you have a tracking dog or not, you still need kind of the general public, the neighbors, or people in the community to know because you need them to call you and say, "Hey, I just saw your dog in my backyard." And it helps develop a pattern. Nonetheless, and again, back in June, I'm not 100% sure, 2021, exactly where, the case kind of fell, but they managed to find Sugar in October of 2025. I got a phone call and she was like, "You're never going to believe it." He was living with a feral cat colony. He had gained weight, and he was just living his best life. I mean, the Chihuahuas, people underestimate the small dogs, but the small dogs will give you a run for your money. They go and they're resourceful. So she got Sugar home after 4.5 years.
That is an amazing story. And yes, I would think a coyote would get those little chihuahuas like on the first night.
Right.
So
And,
don't.
people say that all the time. And, you start again, especially if you're out tracking, with a tracking dog to get on people's property, you knock on doors, "Hi, this is what we're doing. We're looking for Fluffy and I've got a tracking dog. Are you okay with us on your property for a second?" And depending on the area you're in, you get the kind of more Southern old school kind of mentality where, "Oh, you know what? We have coyotes through here. Dog's dead." Like, okay, well, thank you so much for your opinion. You just kind of got to keep moving. And is it possible? Sure. Um, but I would say the majority of the time it's not really probable, right? Unless it's mating season can be a thing if, animals come up on cubs and dens and that kind of stuff. But these dogs that are in fight mode, again, they hide really well. Um, and they do know how to take care of themselves at the end of the day.
That is cool. Good for
I would say
dogs.
kind of the humans are probably more of the concern and more predatory than the animals are because people see a lost dog and they're like, "Oh, there goes Fluffy. I see the sign. I'm going to go get Fluffy." And they start chasing the dog or calling the dog. And now, number one, that dog's not coming to you and the dog's going to 1,000 times over outrun you all day long. Um, and all they're doing at this point is trying to get away from you. So they're not making, they're making poor decisions, right? Whether that be to run into traffic, get hit, into a highway, that kind of thing. And you're also pushing them from where they very possibly are in like kind of a safe area where you might have trappers or trackers attempting to, get them home. But now all that's out the door because now they're associating that area with fear and they're not going to come back. So then we're starting from, square one again.
I think you said at the beginning one of the most important things to get those flyers out. I do
Hmm.
see sometimes flyers like that, and on it it says, "Do not approach." And I was always thinking, "Oh, that dog must be fearful," but maybe he's gone into that feral state,
100%. Yes.
and that's just what we're
That's
dealing with.
normally, the most friendly of friendly dogs. Well, the flyers should likely still say, "Do not chase" or "Do not
Mhm.
approach." Maybe, take a picture with your phone and text it. In general, when I'm talking to people, I say, unless they're knocking at your front door, literally, pretend they're not even there because they're going to run. And that's why a lot of the flyers generally don't have a name on them. Because again, it's so hard to take that, instinct out of not calling the dog or whatever, because just that one call could make or break the whole thing. And if they know the name, they're more than likely going to call, right? So we don't put names on flyers or anything to try to discourage the calling out.
So, because my audience is mainly dog trainers, it's probably advantageous if they're listening to this podcast and thinking about having a flyer almost ready to go because I've had people, come to my facility, drop the dogs off, they open up their car door and gone goes Maggie. And I'm like, dude,
Right.
now we have a
Right. Yep.
problem.
Right.
So,
Just a general template. Lost dog. They're on my website. They're on the Facebook page. Lost dog.
oh,
Do not chase. Phone number. Done. That's all you need. You don't need anything. We don't, you don't need to tell the entire community that he is, he only likes whatever for dinner or whatever. Sometimes pictures can be deceiving. So if they're, a really, really small dog, like a 3 to 5 pound dog that might look bigger in the picture, maybe put that on there. And then maybe like one of the little icons with, take a picture and text it type of thing, or please check your cameras because that, people have all the Ring doorbells and Google Nests these days. And so, you can actually utilize those cameras to pick up, to get sightings as well. So use other people's cameras to help fill in that pattern.
now before we started recording today, you'd mentioned that it was just the 4th of July. And I know that that can be an insane time because I used to work in an emergency hospital. We were open in the middle of the night in Las
Mm-hmm.
Vegas. So 4th of July and New Year's
Wow.
Eve, we had all these people dropping off these stray dogs that jumped fences, broke out of garages, whatever. And I mean, we would probably take in maybe 15 dogs in that on that evening and before and after because people are practicing their fireworks, which is horrible news for, yeah, fireworks. They're just not worth the pleasure that they bring for the trouble they cause.
And especially when they're unexpected, right? Like if you're shooting them off on July 2nd and your neighbors don't know they haven't medicated dogs or whatever, they're out back type of thing. It can be it's a whole thing. Yes. Um, I myself have had over 100 requests from June 26th through right now. And it's just spanning, I think I had a couple in Norman, Oklahoma. I had a Texarkana, Texas come in. Um, I just got back from Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. So it's, it can be
So
a lot.
you're like a superhero flying all over to help.
Yeah, I just have a lot of miles. I like my car a lot. So,
Yeah, because you're
yes,
driving to these places.
I've got multiple dogs. So yes, it's maybe not faster, but it's almost easier than attempting to get on a plane with, get dog food, whatever, and got to rent a car and all the logistics. I try to map it out as, in the order that makes the most sense geographically as I can. But it's almost guaranteed that every time I leave a state, such as Vermont, by the time I hit like, the Maryland state line, I've got more Vermont or Maine or something super exciting coming in. So there's no way I personally, obviously, can even call all these people back, right? Much less
Yeah.
get out there and actually help them. So I do have a network of people I work with, whether they be, I've got a girl in California. I have 3 others directly on my team. And then I do have a girl who helps me with my calls. Her name's Megan. She lost her cat. I guess it's been about 2 years. I helped her find her cat. And she kind of got very emotionally involved in it, and she's been amazing. But she'll take the forms when they come in and she'll do the initial call, kind of explaining what tracking is. This is what we do. This is how the process works, making sure they have a good scent item, for instance. And for, rescues and trainers and those types of businesses, it takes maybe 4 seconds. And I think it costs like 10 cents an animal to make sure you have a good dedicated scent item for every pet that comes into your home. Because if, Fluffy goes running off and you've got 4 other dogs in your home and they all share everything and whatever, it helps to have, I can't necessarily track off an item that all 4 dogs have been on and be confident I'm tracking the only one that's missing, if you will. So that's a big problem with, again, rescues or transport. And I've seen trainers struggle to come up with the dedicated scent items, especially if it's like a board and train, right? And mom and dad are on vacation in Italy and they're trying to get back, but they're not home yet. And so you don't have access to, anything of the dogs, their residents per se. And if you can't get anything, I can't really do any kind of scent specific tracking for that animal without an item.
Wow. So a little tip might be if would the owners maybe bring an item, Ziploc and freezer bag it, or like
Or
what
I
could
mean,
be a
again,
tip?
all it is, it's just gauze. Get some latex gloves, right? Get a piece of gauze, wipe the dog down, ears, paws, whatever. Like right when they get to you, like a lot of times they'll put on the different collars or whatever. When you're doing the different collar, just incorporate it into your, your intake
Yeah.
procedures, right? Gauze, gloves, put it in a Ziploc bag, label it with the dog's name, put it in the freezer. That way, if
I
Fluffy goes
love
running
that.
off, but while they're there, you have something that's just theirs. It's not contaminated at all, and it's set away.
Yeah, and maybe just for the beagles and the huskies and those types of dogs that are, red flag,
The pro,
flight risk
right,
dogs.
right, right. Huskies, shot, yes, all of those.
Yes. Okay, so that's a
Malinois.
good little tip. Have
Mhm.
have the flyer ready to go. Look at your website so you can get tips there. And you mentioned at the beginning of the call, like, think people just inadvertently do the wrong thing. They chase the dog, things like that. Like, what I, as a dog trainer, I kind of know, like, run away, crouch down, grab
Right.
a
They call it
bowl with some
calming
food.
signals, right? Calming
Yes.
signals. And again, something that, especially from a trainer standpoint, right? You might have just met this dog. This dog has no idea who you are or anything like that. So they're not necessarily looking for you, particularly when they go missing. They're looking for mom and dad's scent, right? And so if, you just want to make sure that you don't get offended when they do turn around and run from you, but if you can get them back relatively quickly, like a game, right? Oh, look, and we know that they like playing fetch, whatever, it's more of a puppy, turn around and run into any kind of fenced in backyard, run away from them. Or, toss some food and get down on the ground type of thing. Just don't make direct eye contact. And hopefully they are able to get close enough to you to realize, okay, I can trust this person. And even if they don't, maybe you're covered in like bacon grease, you have something that's, definitely appealing to make them approach you and go from there. But I find a lot, like I know a couple of, some of the more military-esque trainers that I've worked with in the past, and again, they're coming at it from a missing person standpoint almost, right? Like you got this person missing, they've missing however many hours. Now they're talking about doing grid searches and all of this other stuff, which if you were missing, the 82-year-old woman or the five-year-old kid, that's 100% great. But by grid searching any woods and having more people flood that area that this dog does not know and is not familiar with, all we're doing is pushing that dog further away. And so it's kind of important to realize that less can be more. I generally tell people if they want to help to take a stack of flyers and get them up. You know, for a dog, I would say a 3 to 5 mile radius. A dog can go 3 to 5 miles a day if they put their mind to it. Ideally, it's a circle of sorts, but again, if they find themselves on train tracks, power lines, creek beds, they can just easily kick it straight and not turn back. Um, a lot of people worry even more because it's not a location that the dog's familiar with. But hindsight, dogs that get lost from places they're not familiar with, whether it be car accidents, state parks, borders, train, whatever, they do tend to circle back to point of loss. It's just a matter of when and if anyone's there to see them. So hopefully maybe they have some Ring cameras or something like that out of the property. And if they wanted to grill that night for dinner, right? Get that scent up in the air and, leave the food outside and let's see if we can, get Fluffy coming back on the camera to point of loss when things kind of quiet down and there's no one out and about.
Great tips. What would you be doing if you didn't get on this journey of, like, what was your life plan? Because you definitely went down this path of pet
It
tracker.
was not this. I'm a former director of human resources for Marriott. I've worked for Hilton. Um, I've done a lot of recruiting and staffing. I've worked for the Washington Redskins doing staffing for their press box and the suite level catering suites. So totally different. Totally different.
Wow.
Definitely more in the
And,
office and not in the middle of the woods having, going through spider webs.
and was it your dogs you were finding dogs? Like, how did you get started in the very beginning?
Well, I mean, just kind of, the interest sparked from the rescue, City Dogs Rescue. And then, yeah, so, I just kind of just got more and more involved. And it was just so cool to kind of give back. And it was something, just different and neat. And I was able to work with my dogs, right? Like,
Yeah.
obviously I love animals. I love dogs. And it was, when you think about recruiting in HR, you are still helping people, right? Whether that be helping them get a job, helping them do this. So I'm still helping people. It's just in a different aspect.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's tied in, superhero slash HR.
Right. Details. And the HR gave me a little bit of the, I would say, not really client relations background, right? Because you're dealing with a lot of
Mm.
different personality types. And not only are you out there from like, the tracking standpoint, but you almost end up playing a therapist as well. Because you have to kind of, help people control their emotions and set expectations. And I find a lot of time, obviously everyone's very, very upset, and some can be more emotional than others. But at the end of the day, it's, I like to have the owners with me when I'm tracking because, again, their dog is looking for them. So if I can have their scent where their dog is, that just helps, reinforce the dog will stay in that area. I've had the dogs come out behind us on tracks and we've gotten in that way. But if mom's out there, crying and sobbing and can't, kind of get a grip, her dog's not going to want anything. Her dog's gonna be like, uh-oh, what's wrong? Something's wrong with mom. I'm not, we're not doing that. I'm just going to stay hidden here, or I'm going to go a little further till mom comes, calms down and maybe then reapproach. But I try to have everyone out there, we're not crying. If you need to cry, sob, whatever, great. We'll do it at home, closed doors. And then when we're out and about tracking, or whether you're hanging flyers or doing feeding stations, you got to stay a little bit optimistic and try to keep your emotions in check, which is very challenging.
And also need to work together as a team with you too.
Oh,
So
yes.
they're not distracting you from doing your job.
There are a lot of hands involved, and, everybody kind of plays a part. Um, I do, I can trap, yes, but the trapping is kind of a whole different animal in itself, if you will. Especially because, again, I can't tell you if, it's cats in particular tend to take a little longer than dogs do. And so I just don't have the bandwidth to go up to Vermont and track a cat and then sit up there for the next 7 weeks while I trap the cat and get the cat home. So I do, work with a network of trappers kind of all over the East Coast, Midwest. There are a couple I know in Oregon. I've got somebody in Washington State that once sightings start coming in, or once there's a track done, so we know where we have scent, where we don't have scent, they're able to come in with cameras and feeding stations. And then once we get the animal on camera, then they can go to the live trapping portion of it. So you're dealing with a lot of different, hats per se, a lot of different personalities that have to come together and collaborate just to get the one dog home.
Yeah, I bet the sighting calls could throw you off too if someone has a sighting, but it's the wrong pet.
And that happens a lot. And
Yeah.
the most challenging thing, and I'm not quite sure why, but because everyone's got a phone in their hand all the time. I mean, people are like, you always have a phone. It's very hard for people to take a picture. I just I don't get it. Like we say, don't chase, and you kind of say, take a picture of scene, right? Because you're thinking, okay, we don't want them to chase, so let's give them something else to do, right? They'll take a picture and text it, and that picture can make or break. Um, because again, at the end of the day, I can say where I have scent, and I do tend to go outside of that area and look at, okay, so the, path of travel is this. So he could easily pop up here, here, here. And I do like a perimeter of what I call negative markers, meaning no scent is present. And I tell people, the track is a snapshot in time. Just because Fluffy's not here right now does not mean in 48 hours he will not be. And so that way we incorporate those areas as well into the flyering and the outreach. And that way, if Fluffy does move, we know about it. But when we get the call, oh, okay, we saw a dog, looks just like him, 100%, whatever, 17 miles away. Okay, it's been 24 hours. Is it possible? Sure. Is it probable? Not probably not. But again, it's hard to say 100%. And so then you have to take those resources and you have to move them 17 miles out, get a camera and a feeding station out there just in case it was Fluffy, get more flyers out 17 miles out, just in case, only to come back and find out it was, the doppelganger, or it was the guy who lives on the corner. He's got a dog that looks just like him and he roams kind of thing. Um, there are some tools that, we do lineup cards for clients, which essentially it's like a police lineup, right? So when people call you off the flyers, they think they saw the dog on the flyer, right? And that's why they're calling. But if you give them options, like you put two pictures of your target dog on there that are not on social media and not on the flyer, and then you throw in some extras, like, you can look at a lost and found page and say, okay, here, there's another ship missing. We'll put him on there. And then we'll throw a Mal on there. A lot of times I'll throw a deer on there because you'd be surprised how many people see Bambi and get confused. And then
Whoops.
when the sighting calls come in, I have them send them that picture and say, okay, which dog did you see? And ideally, they pick out your dog and not Bambi and whatnot. And that kind of helps to, it just helps with the confirmation, right? So that way we're a little bit more sure because, again, it's not the picture on the flyer that they were expecting to see. but they have to actually think about what they saw. So we try to, take off any extra burden per se and kind of help narrow it down as much as we can.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I love what did you call it? The lineup?
A lineup card, yes,
Lineup
yes.
card.
And
I
again,
love
it's like a
that.
please lineup. It's got, 8 pictures of a variety of dogs on there or whatever. Um, cats are a whole different thing. And I'm sure that, I don't know a lot of trainers that train cats, but, for people that have cats that are trainers, right? If you're not a cat person, you see a white and black cat. Oh, okay, that's, clearly the cat that's missing. You're not looking at markings and all this other stuff that, the cat people are. And so it can really help with that because, one white stripe going this way and your cat has it going that way. Cats can be a little more challenging with the sightings. I'll just leave it at that.
I bet. I bet. Now tell me, you mentioned your dog Magic and you mentioned
hmm
that you had multiple dogs. Tell me about your dogs.
Well, so Magic was, she was a yellow lab. She passed away about a year ago, but she was kind of the one that I based the entire idea off of. You'll see, if you go to the website or whatnot, you'll see a yellow lab. That was her. And she was actually a diabetic alert dog prior to me. And she ended up in a shelter in Texas. And they reached out and they were like, we've got this dog. She'd probably be really, really good. She's already got scent work on her. You just have to teach her how to follow it. And she knew her job and she loved it. And, we had a great time. Um, I found that some of the terrain I go through, like I wasn't really excited about going over horse jumps without the horse, for instance, right? And I'm not even saying, I'm being very specific. Like literally, some of these dogs in the country, you're going over horse jumps and trying to keep up with them, and it's significantly harder with me in a lab. So I branched out, and I have a rat terrier named Trix, and so that way, if I have to do searches like that, or I've looked for missing horses, and it's much easier to keep up with them while you're on a horse, I can put her in a backpack and we can go. She's much easier to pick up and just drop down and go with that. Um, I have another black lab named Finley, and he is kind of my main go-to right now. We just certified in Texas actually with United Canines. And then I've got a lab, his half brother, I guess, different litter, named Tracer, and he just turned 6 months old, and we're in the process of training him up.
Wow. That is amazing. So you really leaned into the dogs as part of this instead of
Well, yes,
just, I'm going to learn how to use the drones and the traps and the flyers and help people that way. You've leaned into heavily having all of these amazing dogs.
I do. I do have a thermal drone as well, and it can be useful. I find that, it's again, everything's a tool, right? And so, each case is a little different, but when you bring all those tools together, it helps to it helps to complete the puzzle. So a lot of times, especially with the drones, and I think people want that immediate gratification. They're like, okay, the drone's going to go up. They're going to see my dog. I'm going to go get my dog, and then we're going to be done with it. Yes. And that sounds amazing. But what people don't take into consideration is that dog that you've had for 24 hours, it does not know you. Okay, the drone's going to see it, but then what? You're going to try and go get this dog, and the dog's going to be like, oh, I don't know you. I'm out. And then it's the game of chase again. Um, if the drone sees nothing, you're kind of left with nothing, right? You have no idea, no direction to travel, no nothing. But with a tracking dog, no matter what, you're going to have a direction of travel. You're going to have, valid information on a map that will help you map out the entire process, right? The way I do it mainly is, again, I'll run the dogs first. Depending on where I'm at, I'll either have the drone follow me or go out ahead of me and kind of to the sides. And I've had that happen where he sees the dog 400 feet in front of me and he calls, he's like, hey, Mavis, 400 feet in front of you, which gives me time to back out with my dog. Cause again, Mavis doesn't know Carmen or Finley. And then I can send the owner in with calming signals and hopefully she can get the dog that way. Cause again, we've got eyes on the dog and I'm not, pushing him. Um, or we've had it happen where, I get to an area and then I'm able to kind of block it in with negative markers. And then we have the drone fly that area to try to get the visual. So it's, it can work in the first 5 to 7 hours and they can, like, again, you might get lucky and hey, my dog's going to come right to me. That'd be amazing. Or if they're stuck in a ravine or, leashes attached, that kind of thing. But I find that when you pair the two, you have a little bit more of an advantage. And 5 days of a dog missing with no sightings, I would almost say you need a sighting to throw a drone up, unless you have a dog as well. Because if they're going to go 2 miles a day, having a drone go up from point of loss because you have no idea where they are or where they went, you're not going to, you might see someone else's dog, but you're probably not going to see your dog without knowing where
It
to look.
it sounds just like this beautiful choreographed like scenario. Like you've done this a lot. So
Well, I
you,
call it the art of finding lost pets
yeah, it is. It's an
because
art.
it's a dance. It's a
Yeah.
dance, right? You have to put all the pieces together. Everyone has to know their part and play their part, and everyone, ideally plays really well together in the sandbox, if you will, and that's what kind of makes it work. I don't think, I couldn't do it by myself. I know that, and again, it's really the team behind you that makes you successful.
And I think when you and I first talked, I was so curious, even coming from a dog trainer, I've taught my dog to find my scent. I've taught my dog to find a bad guy's scent, things like that. But to teach my dog to search for a lost husky, like, or an iguana, uh,
Well, yeah.
maybe share a little bit about that because it blew my mind. I'm like, oh, I never thought of that.
Well, and a lot of people, a lot of people are of the mentality, I guess, that a dog will not track another dog, or a dog that tracks a dog will never track a person. I've come to find in my experiences and, through training and just, trial and error that I want my dog to track whatever scent I present them, whether that be the 2-year-old, the capybara, the husky, the 80-year-old, whatever. And I've done all of the above. I've done capybaras, I've done turtles, I've done fennec foxes, I've done kids. And again, it's what you train for, right? So if I never trained to find a lost dog or train my dog to track, lost dogs, then I probably wouldn't, I'd be like, yeah, there's no way, he's going to jump tracks and he's going to go find the owner or something like that, or he's going to jump tracks and next thing you know, we're chasing deer. But again, it's just coming down to knowing how to read your dog and having, the 3 magic words, trust your dog. I think that's probably the hardest, concept most handlers have, no matter how experienced you are. You always have to trust your dog. And if you don't have that kind of relationship or that confidence, number one, your dog's going to feel it down the line. And your dog's going to be like, oh, well, mom doesn't think I can do this. So what are we doing? I'd much rather go, check out the deer or check out the groundhog or whatever, start crittering, um, than and kind of going from there.
And so the capybaras and the fennec foxes, I'm like, oh my gosh, did you
Capybara
find
was
these
named
capybaras?
Copernicus.
Oh,
Yeah, yes, his name was Copernicus, and she had a little like a tuxedo harness for him or whatever, and he chewed his way through a pig pen type situation in the backyard. And capybaras, they like water. They can live in water. I think it's up to 22 or 23 hours they can stay underwater without coming up for air. And then when they do come up, just a little nose, pops up, which is probably the size of like your pinky nail. Um, and they had a pond on the property. And so I had Jake the coonhound, and then I Jake and Magic, they both did the same track. They both looped the pond and got in. Now, for my lab to get in the water, okay, maybe she, she's a lab. It is what it is. But Jake was not a fan of swimming. Um, it's very hard to try to trap a capybara that's in a pond because they don't eat meat. There's no luring, right? Like everything they need is in that pond. They have no desire to come. Like, what do you do? So about 6 months went by and I got a text from the girl and she's like, Carmen, your dogs are so smart. She was like, we were out there at the fire pit and we saw Copernicus in the pond. And I'm like, yay. So I guess Copernicus is possibly still living his best life in the pond in their backyard. I mean, I would assume if there was a 120-pound rat running around Baltimore, Maryland, we might hear about it somewhere. You'd know about it. So I'm going to assume he's still in the pond. But yes, very, very different
any
type of
other
track.
unusual animals, tigers, orangutans, anything else?
I mean, I did get the
Raccoons?
request for the zebras in Tennessee. I forget it was a big thing maybe about a year ago, maybe not even. Um, I cannot keep up with a zebra that's covering a
Mm.
state per se. I can't, again, it has to be done kind of within reason. Um, I've gotten requests for alligators before. I had 2 different alligator requests. One was named Karen in Michigan, and I did not take those for a variety of reasons. Number one, again, I've got a red terrier. She's 15 pounds. She's 20 feet in front of me. Yeah, I know they say Karen's super domesticated and whatnot, but I just, yeah, that's kind of like a appetizer for Karen, if you will. Um, I've gotten requests, I've done turtles. I cannot do snakes because I personally don't think I could. Yeah, that probably wouldn't work well for me. Um, but I've gotten requests for domesticated ducks.
Oh,
We did do a parrot at one point not long ago in Leesburg, and we were able to track, again, scent to scent, it's dropping to the ground, right? So we were able to get two sightings off of the track, but I don't, and then I guess I had to do some lost parent research, right? Because I'm not super familiar with birds. Apparently, it's a big homing thing. And so we put his cage up there on a balcony and hoped he would come too. And he was in a part of Virginia where, like, right on the Potomac River. So he could easily just, and he did hop over. He just flew over the river to Maryland, and there he was. And it's not quite that simple for me, if you will. Um, but essentially, if it has a scent, we can do our best to go find. We do what we can. Do we get every pet home? Unfortunately not. It's kind of, like there is that they do think for themselves, right? So for instance, dogs that are unneutered, not altered, they might not follow the whole lost pet behavioral type patterns, right? Because they're going to get up with something and I'm not doing this circle and screw your bacon. I'm going to go this way. Um, and again, human interference is always a thing, right? If they get chased, they get pushed from an area, it totally switches stuff up. A lot of people try to do finders keepers with certain kinds of dogs, which makes it challenging. And it just,
what's finders keepers? Oh, they keep they get the
yes,
dog and they just keep it.
correct.
Yeah.
I had a blind pit bull not long ago. She was out 38 days. I think the track took me maybe 4 minutes. We went out we went out the yard or whatever, and they were super concerned about woods and everything else and whatever. I had no scent anywhere near any kind of woods. And we went on the main road. We walked up the main road a little bit, so they crossed the street and then sat down in a driveway. And that's just where scent ended. I went out to try to make sure I didn't miss a backtrack or something, just to kind of cover my bases, and I had nothing. We did not get one sighting. 38 days later, she showed up at their back door, healthy as all could be. Paws were fine. She did smell like perfume, I was told, a little bit. So we're relatively confident that she might have been sitting on someone's couch. And, her owners were super, super persistent about it. Like they put out, I mean, every day it was Facebook and they had the great big banners out. And so I'm assuming it's probably someone who drove through the area maybe and I would hope felt bad. Um, Sometimes a lot of people just don't know what to do when they find a dog baby. And if there
Mm.
aren't like if the dog just goes missing and is, super friendly and it's been 20 minutes and they're just out living their best life and they hop in a car, there's no signs up yet. Nothing's been done because nobody might not even know that the dog's missing. And then it becomes a whole thing. Not everyone's on the lost and found Facebook pages. Not everyone's on Facebook. And while microchips are relatively well known these days, I mean, I'm pretty sure, you find somebody who's 75, 80 years old, they find a dog, they think they're doing the right thing because, they don't want Fluffy to get hurt or whatever, but they don't know about microchips. It can be challenging.
Yeah, that would suck.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
not great.
They'll invent like a whole backstory of how abused the dog was and they're saving it. And yeah.
Right. I did, I think it was 4th of July weekend, maybe 5 years ago. It was a little Boston Terrier named Fisher, and his family was from Rhode Island, or no, they were from Connecticut, and he went missing. It happened to be a Saturday, the 4th of July. He went missing from their condo. I think I got up there maybe day 5 or 6, and there were no sightings, no nothing, and we tracked, and the track ended in front of a nightclub called Secrets, and that's a very, people are in and out all weekend long, right? Like it's a very, vacation touristy destination. It was also 4th of July weekend, right? So you have even more people in there, and they're probably, checking in Sunday, out Sunday, Sunday to Sunday type rentals. And we got nothing. I mean, this girl pushed it out in every way, shape, form possible she could to find this dog, and nothing for 8 months. And he was found in Baltimore, Maryland, wearing a studded leather, studded collar. And he probably got out from whoever he was with because whoever found him knew to scan for a microchip, and that's how he got reunited. But, again, 4th of July weekend, sent it end in front of a very well-known bar, club, whatever. My thoughts probably, well, somebody probably woke up Sunday morning and they were like, wow, I have this dog. Where'd you come from? And off to Baltimore Fisher went. So, yeah.
Wow. And tell me a little bit about your dog, some of the training exercises, how often you're working with them to help, do their magic.
Well, so right now Tracer's still in training. We try to train. It varies because again, with my schedule, I kind of have to be super flexible with it, right? Like I was up in we were staying in Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut last weekend, and we did some training there with a couple of friends of mine who are starting their dogs as well at the Residence Inn. You kind of again, it's helping environmentally as well, right? So now they're used to this and you're training through it. Um, we try and train with him at least 3 times a week at this point. And he started doing, hard surfaces. And when we were in Texas, we had an exercise that we were tracking through an elementary school. And then he had to, detect which kid it was out of 7 kids at the end of the track. And he did phenomenal. Um, Finley, we try to not work every day, but at this time of year, we're probably pretty much working almost every day. He didn't work today, but we're booked from tomorrow through Monday. Um, so I don't really push training on him right now at this point. Typically, we go every other Saturday and we have a group we train with, and we, always work on your foundational stuff, right? Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what you want. So we just continue, expanding on foundational stuff or switching up surfaces or, a variety of go to Dulles Airport and do some stuff through the baggage claim. The Buc-ee's gas station, there's one that opened up in Harrisonburg, Virginia a couple years ago, and we did some training exercises through Buc-ee's. I found that Finley does not like the Bucky the Beaver in his whole, the whole beaver suit and whatnot. So we might not do super well at Disney World. But he wanted nothing to do with that thing. But we just, have to stay consistently on top of it. And especially when you're training a new dog, you have to kind of stay as consistent as you can, which with my kind of lifestyle is not super simple. I mean, my schedule shifts it could shift every hour, every 2 hours. It's just hard to say. Someone comes home and you shuffle and all of that stuff.
And when you are working with the dogs, like practicing, do you have them finding humans,
Both.
dragging? Okay.
Both. Um, or, again, like, some of the age tracks or whatnot, like, I live on the side of a mountain. So when it was snowing and all that good stuff, we'd work on age tracks. I'd lay the track before the snow, track mid-snow, and then lay another one just again, because I work a lot in Vermont, in Maine. And if you don't know what your dog is capable of and you don't train for it, you have no idea what to expect when you get up there. Um, so I'll take a collar or whatever. I'll walk tricks, downside of the mountain, whatever. And again, because I can pick her up, right? I'll wrap a collar or something around a tree branch, pick her up, and then come off the track and let it age. So that way, when we actually run the track, you can see kind of what their disposition is going to be when they get there, but there's no subject, right? But there's an item. So that way you can teach them to alert on the collar per se. And with pickups, someone puts a dog in a car, that kind of thing, you might not be lucky enough to have any kind of item. So you have to know what to look for.
Yeah, this sounds like a lot. You have to just consider so many variables.
There are, I mean, yes. And I learned something new almost on every case. Um,
Fun.
like dogs, like they like to follow water, right? Like, the kind of 3 common characteristics of lost pets are they circle. They tend to be most active between dusk and dawn, and they're going to stay near a water source, whether it be a river, a creek, a pond, whatever. But you lose a lab that loves water and you're right there on a creek bed. That lab's going to go running down that creek bed till whatever. And then you have to start thinking about, okay, well, how is that water dispersing the scent? Right. So you need to, if he's running through here or whatever, he lays down in the creek and splashes around, wherever that water, the direction of that water flow is going to disperse that scent further out, quite possibly significantly further out than where the dog's actually gone. So now you got to figure out, okay, am I tracking paws on the ground scent or am I tracking, dispersed water scent? And there's a lot that goes into it that people kind of don't think about per se.
Wow. Yeah, that is a lot. Is there just so many things to unpack? But is there anything that you'd like to share that people might do, but something that just might really surprise us?
Let's see. Like a fun fact about lost animal behavior or about um, okay, this good stuff. Well, I don't know. It's a fun story, I guess, ish. We tracked a cat in Tribeca that went missing off a 6th floor terrace. and the cat actually never left. Her paws never touched the ground. She building hopped. And so I was using again my rat terrier, and I'm not building, people might think, oh, that's very superhero-esque, your job and whatever, you're amazing and blah, blah, blah. But I'm not that cool.
Like
I'm not
nothing.
super, yeah, I'm not building hopping anything.
You're
I
not
don't care how close it
Matrix.
is. um, and again, the air scent or whatever pulls and you got, wind and all that stuff. So we were able to kind of pinpoint and actually see the cat with binoculars on a building catty corner to where we were. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
See,
again, I would say it's not impossible and you don't know if it's impossible until you try it. And the training is a big portion of it. If you don't train your dog on age tracks, you're never going to know if you can do age tracks. Um, some of the more, I guess, some people are the mentality that the rain will wash scent away, right? Once it rains, tracking's over. There's no, you're not gonna be able to get anything, whatever. And if you're in like Tribeca, okay, that might be true. It's literally all it is concrete, right? But for more suburban, rural, country, farm, those kinds of areas, the ground actually enhances it. So the rain's going to enhance the scent. The ground will act as a sponge and absorb it, making it more fresh for tracking dogs. So it's kind of a misconception that I would say 75 to 80% of people have.
yeah. And if folks, you said that obviously through July 4th, people are reaching out to you. What does that process look like? They go to your website. Is there a fee? What
Yep.
does that all look like?
Well, so you go to the website and there's a whole like tracking consultation request form and you fill that out. And once you submit that, you get tips for a lost cat or a lost dog, or I think both actually, depending on what you select. And then I've kind of put it out there on social media and everywhere else. But again, it is the 4th of July. And so we try to respond to people within 24 to 48 hours. But when you're getting, 17 requests a day, it's challenging to juggle that, to juggle all of that. So patience. And then once they submit a form, Megan will call them back and kind of go over everything. Like, okay, they might not even need tracking, or tracking might not be a good option for them, right? If they're seeing their dog every day on camera somewhere, they don't need me and they don't really want me. Tracking dogs just gonna I'm essentially doing what we tell people to not do. I'm methodically chasing their dog, right? And so if you know where your dog is, you don't need me, you need a trapper. And so if that's the case, we try to connect them with somebody in their community who's able to help them, with a live trap or, with the cats and whatnot. The equipment isn't as heavy per se, and it isn't as, you know, large and hard to come
Yeah.
by. So we can coach them on how to get their cat home and how to trap their cat. Um, and then maybe they just need the drum, right? I mean, again, it's all very situational. Now I'm not independently wealthy. So there is a fee for the tracking and the travel and all of that. And again, that's kind of dependent on where they're located and what are they missing? Are they missing, a dog that's been gone 24 days with no sightings and it's a husky and they lost him from a national forest type of thing? Or is it the indoor only cat that's been missing for, 2 or 3 days and that kind of stuff? It just depends on length missing, what's missing, what's the background, and location's big. There's obviously a very large difference in me driving 20 minutes versus me driving 9.5 hours each way.
Awesome. That is very helpful info. Now, as a dog trainer, what advice would you have for someone like me if I had a perimeter issue or equipment malfunction and this dog is gone? I've I reach out to you.
Well, I would say tell the owner first before
Okay.
anything else. 100% tell the owner. I would say be very, very proactive with it, right? Especially when you're talking to the owner, kind of have a plan in place. And, that's something I know that a variety of companies or organizations will do. They have, okay, yes, we've put our staff and our trainers or our walkers, whatever, we've gone through a lost pet prevention class. So that way we know we take the extra precautions to not be in this situation. But if we are faced with it, we do have, a standard operating procedures of what to do and how to do it and when and that kind of thing. But, definitely have just a template, like a blank flyer that says lost to the phone number on the bottom, and start with flyers. Definitely, if they do want to consider a tracking dog, I would say reach out sooner than later, because ideally they reach out and they schedule or whatever, and then Fluffy comes home and I'm not needed. But if they wait the 5 days to reach out and then you're booked 7 days out, now we're at 2 weeks. And while yes, tracking can still be done, but I have a feeling that you're going to have a very upset owner, that's going to be frantic and whatnot. And again, it's just kind of wasting time that could be use to put an action plan in place with feeding station flyers, do this, don't do that type of thing. Now, when they call, like right now, I am booked out almost 2 weeks. We do say, okay, well, you live here, and this is, make sure you have flyers here, here, and here. Make sure you get flyers. I tell people to get flyers to the churches within a 10 to 15 mile radius, because that's a different demographic of people, right? They're probably not on Facebook. And if they're driving around, they might not see the, letter size flyer on a phone pole, but they go to church type of thing. And so we can give them resources and things to do that help and proactive per se until we can get there.
Excellent. And yeah, you keep saying flyers. So I think that is one of the biggest things is
A
have
big,
a
big,
plan and
yes.
have a plan in place. Because if you're just like a 2-man show, a 1-man show, maybe have somebody where you could say, hey, print these, get them out for me, have a flyer person, because these flyers seem to be a really important piece for this.
I tell people that if they can afford good flyers or they can afford Carmen, they need to go with the flyers. Because at the end of the day, once I'm there and if we get to a different area, guess what? We're still going to need flyers. So, that I can't stress that enough. And it's probably the most challenging thing to get people to do because it's not fun. It really actually no, it kind of sucks having to go put up flyers on every stop sign and whatever. And
Yeah.
it's tedious and it's just, whatever. But it's also the number one way to get your pet home quickly and safely.
Excellent advice. Well, maybe go ahead and share again how folks can find you. We know your website. If you could share that again, any
Hmm.
socials that might have information for
So
them on.
the website is professionalpettrackers.com. The Facebook page is facebook.com and then Pet Found Inc. Inc. And then Instagram is Found Professional Pet Trackers.
Excellent. Well,
I have a
thank
feeling
you.
if you Google Carmen Brothers, you'll probably also get me as well.
Awesome. And your homework is to go watch Ace Ventura Pet Detective.
Yes, 100%. I will. Yes, that's going to be added to my to-do list.
Love that movie. Love that movie. So, yeah, that is your homework. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Carmen, for joining us today. I'm
Of course.
sure that this will help somebody out there, be it a dog trainer or a
Yep.
pet owner, to
And
hopefully
if
avoid
you do
this.
have trainers that want to kind of go dive down into loss prevention and what have you, I've worked with a variety of companies and I'm happy to help you structure something for, your organizations as well, whether that be 2 people or, I've worked with some of the larger, app-based dog walking organizations, rolling it out to thousands. So we can kind of get you on the right path.
So, like helping them have like SOPs in place, a
Right.
plan.
Right. At the 24 hours do this, at the 36 hours do this. And again, pet parents are always going to react differently. Some are going to be very understanding because it really can happen to anybody at any time. And then you're going to have people who are like, okay, I'm calling my attorney. And so that way you have something to present and to work with. So legal action can be avoided, ideally.
Yeah. And I think too, like a big thing for me is I try to have a relationship with my clients where
Right.
there's so much trust and good communication so that if something bad happens, I can make that phone call and we can talk through it and work together. But
Right.
yeah, maybe like not taking on clients that are giving you that red flag vibe where they
Yes.
have a lot of, I want to see your contract and what happens if this happens. And
100%. Yes. Yep.
yeah,
And I get that too. Like, that's something me and Megan have worked out. If she thinks it's going to be, if they're going to be
risky.
too much per se, we back out as, politely per se as we can. But some personality types just don't click and don't mesh. And, if at the end of the day, they might be better suited to work with somebody else to help them bring whomever home, then that is 100% a route we are okay with taking.
Yeah. Yeah. For your sanity. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carmen, for sharing.
Of course.
I hope that you listeners got something from this, yeah, so much to unpack. I just really, really enjoyed learning about all of this. So thank you for sharing with us today, Carmen.
Of course. Happy to.
Aw- Awesome. And again, I'm Leanne Shinton from Automation Talks, and thanks for listening.